How's everyone doing? Something that's been going on recently, I've kind of noticed. YouTube, not just YouTube, but Facebook. This kind of stuff, you have, oh man, I can't even show it properly. You have an article, The Danger of Science Denial, and then right under, Facebook just adds COVID 19 information. Go check it out. And you see, I want to bring something to that topic. I do want to talk about some science here, and I want to talk about the science of half truths. Something that's been going on. Wait! Don't you dare close that window. Now it's time to face some shadows, because this is something that's been going on for years, and now it's just been activated. On one heck of a fucking momentum, and half truths. So what do I mean? Well, it's this good intending information, one-sided, only showing you one part of what it brings, one part of what it means, one side of the whole picture. And to get into the understanding of the science of half-truths, you kind of want to be aware of the language that is being used on television, media, news article, and even political talk. Because there's a very, very specific, I used to call it basic bitch main character mentality language. But I want to bring a deeper concept. We want to talk science, but here's the thing. Oftentimes, especially nowadays, people are very selective with their science, okay? It's only data type of science, but oftentimes it's just on the virology aspect. There's nothing about the subconscious mind, a person's mind and their perception affecting their body. And that's often dismissed. It's this weird little thing where it's like, nobody wants to talk about this. Nobody, even though we have some amazing studies on neurology, neurolinguistic programming, psychology pushed even further, and you can even link it up to quantum physics if you dare to push that button. But a lot of people just want to stay selective, just this hard-coded fact. And I understand there's fear. Like, it has to be accepted, okay? And this is the first step. You got to accept you have fear. If you're selective in your scientific data and your scientific studies as points of reference, instead of looking at all or most of them and connecting the dots, then you're stuck in fear. It's not your fault. You kind of want to accept that. It is and it isn't, but it isn't. There's a reason for that. Yet, the first step is accepting that you're in fear. Because if you don't, you're indirectly repeating. You guys remember the religious church years ago? It's the one and done, the one perspective, the one popular message, the one way to see things. And if you dare to challenge it, You remember that time, right? If you would dare to say something differently, your grandparents lived that. Your parents lived a part of it. It was still stuck into society, okay? Why in 2021 are we doing the same thing with science? Fear. Fear has to be accepted. If it is not accepted, and if you are currently shaking and going, oh, I'm gonna write one heck of a post topic, I'm not gonna finish this video. Fear. Oh, and also, this is why I did a graph for you. Just a little breakdown, okay? Oh, please show this. Okay. Perception. Key. Okay? Don't fuck with perception. Okay? You were born without any kind of words or any data, but you still had perception, which is why I'm placing it on top. Key. Your perception can affect your body. Oh, right. You remember when I said you shaking? Angry? Why'd your body respond? What's up with that? Is that normal? Has it become normal to you for you to have that kind of reaction? Can you go back and remember when you were a kid if you were having those reactions? See, a lot of people don't necessarily want to ask themselves that question or want to look back at how their perception was. A lot of people just judge themselves when they were kids. And again, there's social programming, repetition of certain kind of language, half truths, you know. But this is important. You can't be selective about your science because that was a small little introduction to neuroscience. Looking at how your perception affects your body, and then your body can also affect your perception. Because let's say you have an illness in your body, your body will signal to your perception that, oh, I am feeling ill. And then a feedback loop is created, like was shown. Now, data can also affect your perception. But before we get into data, this exterior thing, which is not your experience, okay? Your experience still kind of wraps up in your perception because you're actually living something. Data is something that you get from the exterior. It can affect your perception because let's be a bit crude, but you'll see why, okay? And if you're gonna shake up again, you start asking yourself those questions. Please pause the video and ask yourself, why are you having those emotional reactions? When did you pick that up? Because you weren't born with that, and you practically surely didn't have that when you were a kid. Unless an event, a trigger event, kicked it in. Now, if you're not gonna do that work, that's being intellectually dishonest. You won't even start getting into neuroscience or even start to understand psychology to understand how it affects your body. But then you're selectively saying, oh yeah, trust the scientific process. Only this scientific process. But you're not applying it to all. Quite intellectually dishonest. Again, not your fault, because you can ask the question, why am I pulling this off now? Why is today, this time around? How long have I been repeating this pattern? Why? I could give some grain of salt theory, but I'm not the one in your perception, so I can't do the work for you. I'll splice in some hints later on, but again, you want to do the work for yourself. You'll see why. So, when you start understanding that feedback loop, okay, when it comes to perception, when you start also perceiving when those habits began to happen, okay, what it led you to, and also having a visceral understanding, even if you're shaking right now, that your perception is affecting your body in the moment. Because if it wasn't for how you would perceive this talk, you would not be reacting in such ways. And what's fascinating, a bit of a double-edged sword, but once you understand it, you'll take control of it, is that yes, you can develop illness. Yes, if you still remain in a sense of anxiety, depression, and anger, you will develop illnesses. So, your perception can cause you physical harm. It's not the other person. It's not this video. It's not the stuff that you hear outside. Okay? Your perception of it does so. Yet, consider this video as data. Outside data? Potentially. I mean, I'm telling you something and you're then perceiving and experiencing something from it. But it is still your perception of that data that is affecting you. So, here's what's been happening for a long time in humanity. And this is going to be a bit of a rough and tough example, but hey, you got to take the hard pill to swallow to understand how this has kind of fucked with civilizations and people, cities, countries. Is that if the exterior data that is given to you is, let's say, a bunch of half-truths, okay? While you're in a situation of fear, you will take that data as gospel because that's the only thing you're being shown. Two really crude examples. If you're born, okay, crude example, not too much on this one, but Westboro Baptist Church, the kids were raised, groomed to picket at veterans' funerals, at gays' funerals, at various kind of funerals, okay? As young kids, they were groomed. And people were like, oh my God, how dare, you know? They were like, oh, all those kind of reactions. But later on, one by one, they exited that place. What happened? At first, their initial lenses of perception was picketing is good. These people are bad. They are going to hell because of what the Bible says. So the only data, exterior data, that they had in their perception placed them in those situations, had them acting this way. And they couldn't deny that data because there's the fear of being excommunicated, of going to hell, of being damned to eternity. But then they started getting interaction, experience, which grew their perception and got them the fuck out. Practicing the real teachings of Jesus instead of what some dogmatic person have been repeating for a certain amount of time. And again, programming. It's a bitch. Second example. Nazi Germany. Oh shit, anybody shaking right now? What does your perception tell you? Are you feeling targeted? Don't. I just want to stop it right there. If your perception just kind of went there. Some people, they just, especially nowadays, and you kind of see why. I'm saying it with a smile, but this is quite serious. Still, you kind of have to smile at this. Nazi Germany, the slow build-up and rise up to the crime and atrocities that started. After World War I, famine, poverty. Oh, it's their fault, said this one Adolf. Beautiful speeches and narratives full of half-truths, right? It's their fault. They're making a lot of money. So it's their fault. They're hoarding the money. And half-truth in the aspect that your fucking government, okay, sure, international governments could not necessarily poop out money like they're doing right now for criminal companies like Pfizer, but if you reacted to that, pause the video and ask yourself why, okay? But still, you want to look at that. They couldn't poop out money like we can today, apparently, after telling you that we're lacking in budget. You want to look at the inconsistencies, the half-truths out there, okay? And, of course, it was all sorts of bullshit. Yes, Jewish people kept a certain amount of money, but they knew how to make it work. They knew business. They understood various concepts that the mass population didn't. So, instead of teaching the rest of the population, there was scapegoating, which is a very fatal half-truth. And then the embellishment. They are dirty. They bring disease and all that crap. Isn't it looking too familiar? Now, if you're shaking and still having emotional reaction, again, stop and ask yourself why. You really want to get to the reason why your perception is having your body react this way. Because right now, you're not being directly targeted. You're not being directly compared. You're not being said you're a Nazi. This is just certain concepts being brought to you and being reflected back. No associations unless your perception does it. This is where I want both my leftist and rightist friend to kind of sit down and start understanding how their perceptions is having them, one, stuck in this, how do I call it? Intellectual fallacy, intellectual dishonesty. Why are you stuck this way? What's going on? What's keeping you from just kind of parsing through that information? even having that moment to reflect upon yourself, right? I did say fear, but there could be something else. I mean, let me bring up the grain of salt theories. Years and years of being taught not to be wrong. School, the fail state. Every time you got a bad grade, if you didn't get it right, shame, shame, shame. Public shame. Media does it as well, right? At home, the pressure that you got over time stays in the subconscious. Subconscious affects your perception. Your perception affects your body. Grain of salt. I mean, it may not necessarily be your specific story, but you want to ask yourself those questions. Everything that's being said is laying it down on the table. You want to do your own research within yourself and within the field and the science of psychology and neuroscience. Because you can no longer stay in a selective phase of perception right now. You are being manipulated with half-truths and ideas of do this to do the right thing, without telling you the other side of that half-truth. How you may be oppressing other people. Even though one of the half-truths that you've been led to thinking is this aspect of embracing everyone, all diversity, all cultures, or if you're in the extreme right or the religious right, embracing everyone as God's creature. But you still have buts and exceptions. And this is what you want to face within yourself. Now, again, pause and ask yourself, how am I going against my fundamental core values? Why? Due to fear? Possibly. Valid reason. There's nothing saying it's all your fault. Remember, perception has been manipulated over years, centuries practically. Look at the religious church. I use this as the best example of all time. It is not to slam down religion. It is just to show you how a popular message can be corrupted by people with interest in division. Women weren't accepted at first. They were lower than D. Then accepted. Then it was ethnicities. African Americans, Asians, blah, 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 blah. Then they were accepted. Segregation was removed. Even though 2021 wants to bring back segregation. Ooh, what's going on here? Then, gays, lesbians. Oh, we've had a recent updates in the 2000s or even 1990s apparently. Then trans. Oh, some updates. See what I mean? It's like, but that's all. Why are we getting patch 1.2, patch 1.3, 1.4 on something that universally says everyone is God's creature? Don't judge them, as you do not want to be judged. So, you can see the exact same parallel right now with the leftists. The social leftists. Accepting all opinions, diversities, and people. Except if you're talking against XYZ, or you make a joke that their perception is not going to take well, or that you talk against certain kind of science when you're showing that science that there's another science that can also have correlations. Can you kind of start seeing this, right? Oh, well, if 20 minutes was too long for you, and you just kind of went back to your Squid Games or whatever television programming you go to, then you kind of also want to ask yourself, when did that habit start happening? What's going on, you know? Intellectual dishonesty. Again, not your fault. Ask yourself the question, when did that begin? How? Were you like this as a kid, right? I mean, one thing that we can all agree upon is that we were taught how to lie. I mean, we saw how our parents did it, and also the fact that we didn't want to make them mad. So, again, you weren't born with that, you were born honest, but at times when you brought that honesty, you would get shat on. But then you see that they go against the process of honesty and they're fine. And you call them out on it and you get shat on. Again, there's a kind of parenting that was going on like that. You went against the teacher, oh, detention. And then the rest of the class laughs at you. See? Again, granular factors, not necessarily your own experience, but you want to sit down and start noticing the dots being connected here. And you don't necessarily want to be selective with your science. You don't want to be intellectually dishonest anymore because you saw how it fucked people in history. So, now, neuroscience. Do not fuck with the subconscious. One single impression in your subconscious mind changes your whole life. I mean, I'm trying to find something a bit more down to earth as an initial subconscious trigger. Something that people could kind of relate to. But it's kind of tricky. Again, we all have different childhoods. So, an example could be... right. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money is hard to get. That's a bit too real for a lot of people. But still, keep that in mind. Growing with that subconscious belief in mind, you will always struggle. Opportunities will come and you'll just let them fly by your head. You'll be like, oh, it's too good to be true. Oh, I'm not a lucky person. Oh, it can't happen. Oh, this data affects my perception, which then affects my body's reaction to taking action. I do not respond, I react. I'm trying to find another example, maybe pushing it a bit too far. There we go. No, this is getting tricky. It's like getting into the granular aspect of certain people's lives. Ignoring imagination. You know, if you're continuously slapped down in school or even at home to ignore your imagination, then you completely forget what Einstein said. Move outside the box. Use your imagination to find different concepts. Oh, and you're also not acknowledging we wouldn't have got this light bulb if it wasn't for imagination. Oh, also, 4 Minute Mile. Best example. One of the best example. In 1950s. Oh my god. A human's heart would explode if that was the case. If people were trying to run that fast. And guess what? We all fucking did it in elementary school. Because we did not have that data from 1950, which was broken by Roger Bannister, which then was broken by university students. We did not have that data affect our perception to then affect our body's results. It is simple, quite simple, to see the extent of how data, very locked perspectives, which also includes half-truths, fucks with your perception, fucks with your own moral value, fucks with your logic, and also, consequently, fucks with your body. Now, if you're in fear, I already gave you the process to do, but there's various other processes that you can do. You can be mindful, just pausing the video and kind of go, listen to that fear. Let it peter out. Let it go high, to the extent that the body will react, and then just let it drain down. Law of polarity. Let it go to its extreme to understand what its extreme is and what it means, to then let the emotion diminish. Because then you will make decisions, actions, responding from a very neutral, level-headed perception. You're not going to be selective of whatever's going to give you the quick fix, which has become the problem now, the extended problem, on top of the gaslighting that's being done worldwide. And this becomes a bit of a, I don't know, personally I find it a tad bit annoying because there's a lot of intellectual fallacy and illogical dismissal being made. You can kind of start seeing that your external data is one facet of life, is one part of science. Neuroscience and your perception is what affects your entire life. Because if your perception is locked off, zoomed in, and given enough valid reason to stay that locked off, the access to the data that you'll get will be minimal. And your benefits from that will also be minimal. This is simple logic. This is practically like 2 and 2. 2 and 2 does 4, you know? Yet oftentimes, and especially nowadays, there's emotional reaction, video, click, close. Or pause, negative comment, close. Or not even wanting to get into the nuances of word. There's just trigger words, reaction, and then angry post. Wasting 30 minutes of your fucking time. Being joking there, but you kind of want to play around with this. You want to be a bit joking about this. Again, mental manipulation has been done for years. Look up MK Ultra. It's been done constantly. Look at the language that you are being given in your news reports, in your movies, to try to tie to current events, you know? You guys, seriously, you're not seeing the patterns? 1980s. Fuck the Russian. All the Russian bad guys. They're evil. Ivan Drago. All the Rambo bad guys. All of that, alright? 1990s. Oh, something about Iraq, huh? Oh, what's going on, huh? All those damn Iraqis. 2000. Talibans. Goddamn Arab. Again, can you start seeing this? Right? 2016 or 2021. Oh, those anti-vax. Oh, those rightists. Oh, those back and forth, right? Oh, those communists. Can you start seeing? Oh, right. Okay, right. How does that affect the subconscious mind? Repetition. How did you think you learn how to walk? You just tried and tried. Eventually your neurons got it. You got a stability. You cognitively understood the motion to result. And you got it. How'd you learn to calculate? How'd you learn your words, your letters? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Repetition. It's simple. Everything that you want to learn, you just got to repeat. The same kind of goes for everything that you wouldn't necessarily want to learn. How do you think the Westboro Baptist Church kids learn how to picket people at that young age? Repetition. How do you think they got that perception to say that if they weren't doing exactly what they were told, they would go to hell? Repetition. Oh, repetition runs your life. You can get played or make it a fun life. It is. How'd you get good at a video game? Fighting game. MMORPG. Repetition. It gets into the subconscious mind. And the same goes with what is being told to you on a daily basis. Repetition of that data, whatever data is being told to you on a daily basis, gets into the subconscious mind, affects your perception, and affects your body and your responses. Well, now reactions. They're no longer response. If they were response, you would be level-headed and choosing. But now it's just reaction. So, don't get fucked by half-truths. Because you look at the situation, you put it back in correlation with what's been happening in history. Especially with the advance of our media. You can get that repetition on your cell phone, on your laptop, on your video games through advertisements, or somebody just blah blah blahing on the mic. In your movies. And if you stay in an aspect of nuanceless, biasless, or biased, I should say. Nuanceless, but biased. Because if it wasn't biased, then there would be nuance. Half-truths, well, you'll get the appropriate results. It's not saying consequence. Again, this is not finger-pointy. It is to bring to light a... how do you say... a kind of factor in our lives that we haven't necessarily paid attention to on a daily basis because we're stuck in the 9 to 5. We kind of get the relief the stress with video games and movies, but we don't necessarily pay attention to how our minds and subconscious mind function and how it gets affected. And we're at this crux point where there's enough pileup of half-truth and inconsistencies that it's pretty much about time to see we've all been gaslit. Pretty badly. And again, not your fault. I would love for schools to integrate mindfulness 101, psychology, understanding perception, what creates your moods and feelings, where did you pick it up, how often did you have to repeat it to anchor it, why do you believe it as truth like Santa Claus, right? All of this is not an aspect of you're being attacked. This is just laying it down on the table for it to be perceived, understood, and then reflected upon. But if you will not do the reflecting upon work, if you're not even going to take... I'm looking at the time now. For you, it might be at some other place. For me, it's right here. If you're not even going to take more than this allotted amount of time to understanding how your own perception, your own living works for and against you, and how you can take the controller, take that fucking DualShock 4, man. You take that DualShock 4 and you start playing your life. If you're not going to take that time, GG, your game will continuously be manipulated. That would be like having some hacker guy literally go into your game and manipulate the data and value so that you won't necessarily play your main quest the way you want it. And not to its optimal matter, because that hacker guy will fuck your perception and will say, oh yeah, you can only get to level 21. And you're technically playing this guy, yes? So you can get to level 9,999 and then some. Literally. It's like that. Just locking your perception in a very small aspect of data, just for you to get back in the argument, right? Not even going to take more than 30 minutes, but then you're going to go play some video games and watch Squid Games or any other kind of show, and then, you know, complain about depression, complain about anxiety. I'm not literally targeting the show, it's just some of the best example of what you don't necessarily want in your subconscious mind on a continual basis. Well done, good show. But what do you keep in your subconscious mind? I already made a video about keeping the collective poo-poo in the mind, so you can check that back in the list. If you want some further discussion, actually no, do the work yourself. I can only bring so much, but eventually you want to make the neural connections. You want to start reflecting upon your life. You want to start understanding when you picked up those perceptions, how your attitude changed, what it brought, and how you weren't born with those perceptions, so you can just change that shit. But also ask yourself why you're not changing it. Again, it's a chain. It is a chain that you have to investigate. And if you're not going to take the time to research and then do the work, why do you expect other people to do that for you? And also at the same time, if you're not going to do it, there's people with interest that will take advantage of you, like it has always been throughout history. So, do not be intellectually dishonest. Understand your perception takes a big toll, an importance, okay, over data. It's not saying shove away data. It's saying that you gotta prioritize your shit. Do not ignore neuroscience. Do not ignore psychology. And do not ignore experiments that have been done on my psychology, like MK Ultra. Tubi.tv. Look it up. MK Ultra. It's been done and it's continuing to be performed. And start asking yourself, without the intellectual dishonesty, why are people getting censored? Again, are you going to repeat history? Are you going to do like the blind religious folks and go with version 1.0, 1.3, but then still value and tout that you accept everyone and that you want the best for everyone, even though you may be enforcing something else on that person that is not their best and not their natural flow? Are you going to repeat history, right? Because of data and fear? Or are you going to step it up, take this into your hand, do your fucking research, take the controller in your hand, and start to play the game the way you want it to be? Again, you can fall into what's been done before because of subtle, non-consensual programming and subconscious abuse, or you can say, fuck it, with a smile, because you want to be playful about this. I know. At times I be too serious. I take that serious tone, but I'm trying to make it a bit light for you guys, especially when I tell you, pause the video if you're feeling those emotions and ask yourself those questions. There's a reason why. You want to get into that habit. Alright? It's like saying right now, the world's population is counting on you. Each and every individual one of you, to get out of that gaslighting and start noticing the half-truths, the nuanceless, biased half-truths that have been projected, and also asking yourself with fun but non-judgmental comparison on yourself, why in 2021 am I hating my neighbor because of a new piece of data that's been brought on? Because I didn't have that 5 to 10 years ago. What's going on? Just ask yourself. Don't judge yourself. Again, if you're feeling this tension, you might subconsciously judge yourself. And again, it's a chain reaction. You got to back up. I say me and various other people who just kind of went through that process and faced our fears, faced our shadows. Just said, all right, let's just lay it all out on the table. Even if you judge yourself, okay, cool. Accept it. Push it. Where did you learn to do that? How often has that been repeated? Have you listened to so many basic bitch main character mentality that just kept doing that to themselves? You know, the self-flagellating dialogue? Is that some Disney Plus dialogue that's going on? I'm wondering, you know? Because that affects people. Is that it? Just keep asking the questions and play with this. Yo, put some music on it. Have fun with this. Make it a fun process. Don't take it so seriously, because that's what kind of got us into this fear state and accepting those half-truths. You know? Just being so serious. Oh my god, this is the stake of everything and blah, 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 blah. In a sense it is, in a sense it isn't. You know, you kind of want to leave yourself that bouncing back and forth, just to allow yourself to see both extremes and embody it to have that gray area. Again, this is very important. In any kind of polarity, you want to look at both extremes and then balance out that middle. Because life is not black and white. There's a massive gray area out there. 8 billion people, all sorts of different cultures, practices, and opinions. If you're going to be selective, then you're intellectually ignoring all of that. And this comes at your expenses, your lack of benefits, and by proxy the people around you, until they kind of fuck off and do their own thing. So you got this. Just take the time. Okay? You're about to press that Netflix. Should I investigate what's going on inside myself first? Should I kind of look at my own values, and am I actually just holding them up? Or am I being manipulated to switch them around here and there, just like politicians have always been doing? Oh, now more so right now. Ask yourself, and then don't judge. Just ask. Lay it down. Write it on a journal. Get that habit, okay? Have fun with that. Kick some asses. And again, thank you everyone for the discussions, the DMs, the PMs, both on Instagram and Facebook. It's been really fun, and I understand your moment, your current situation. I fully get it. Sometimes, again, subconscious programming is a bitch. There's no sheep syndrome, like I always say. So I feel the tension that you may be having, and I also understand how this has been slowly programmed into people. And that sometimes you might just go, isn't it fucking obvious? But it's not. Programming is subtle. Loopholes in the law. 2022, that shit's gonna get snapped out. So, I feel ya. Thanks for your support, and I'm supporting you guys as well. Let's investigate even further. Let's play and understand neuroscience even further. Make your own experiment. Put it to the test. And I'm loving the results some people are getting. It's like magical fucking breakthroughs. It's been fantastic. And it's always warming the heart just to see like people that were stuck in fear and anxiety just kind of knowing and getting that click that just kind of goes, wait a second, I didn't have that before. What the fuck? And then pulling the wire. Like, that's always so fucking cool because you sense the change in their physical being, the change in their mood. You know, they're just litten up, and it's like, oh shit, that was all my mind, all my own workings of my mind without necessarily knowing, you know? And that's the balance. Once they get to that state, they don't judge themselves. They just kind of understand, oh shit, I did have something to do with that, but I did. And that's just the best feeling ever. Just to see more and more people just kind of breaking off those shells, you know? Fucking awesome. Again, I'm not doing coaching, but getting that feedback is like, yo, okay, this is why I do these videos. This is why I do the TikTok videos on 3 minutes. And this is why sometimes I'll try to cram that in a 30-second story. Because it's like, people kind of get that, even if the seed is just planted, sometimes there's a nugget that get people to just click and kind of go, oh fuck, you know, especially when it comes to being stuck in a biased way. We didn't see the subconscious programming from school. We didn't expect that. It felt normal. But once you're more in tune with your feelings and you see what it does to your subconscious, you're like, ooh. And having more and more people kind of realize that was like, ooh. Having teachers realize that was like, oh! And it's like, again, they didn't judge themselves. They just understood, oh shit, I was told to act this way. I was taught to teach this way and to make things happen this way. But I didn't understand the long-term effect over my students because I don't keep up with them for like 10 to 20 years and see the progressive momentum of that system on their subconscious. Like, man, you guys are awesome. The guts, the fearlessness of just stepping into that zone and analyzing yourself is something to be praised upon. Especially understanding how society literally makes you a bitch. To be playful, you know? But it's like, don't you dare be wrong, or else I'm gonna flood your tweet and cancel your job. Fucked up, right? When you're held at mental gunpoint, okay? And it's like, yo, don't you start thinking or you're gonna lose your job. Don't you start thinking or you're gonna lose your crowd. Don't you start thinking or else this or else that. Don't you dare make a mistake. Don't you dare grow. Don't you dare expand, right? And now we're reaching the crux point of this shit because even nurses are going, wow! Alright, enough rambling on. This has been great. Again, leave your comments in the description. Thank you people for having donated on the PayPal. It's been really cool. For those who have learned and grew from this, again, grateful. This is what I do. I love channeling this through this for you people. I love having this kind of exchange of understanding and knowing and then being able to connect the dots. So again, if it helps you, feel free to donate at romdomerson@gmail.com. romdomerson@gmail.com. whatever you want through PayPal, if it helps. Just if it helps. This is not demanding. This information is free, downloaded consciousness, but also piggybacking off lots and lots of audiobook research, connecting the dots between multiple material, and knowing that not everyone's going to take the thousands of hours of level grinding to listen to all those audiobooks and research all those materials and read all those books. So this is brought out freely, also telling you to do your own investigation. But if it helps, feel free to donate to the PayPal. You guys rock. I was going to say, we're going to get through this. Let me rephrase that. It's inevitable. Okay? It's inevitable. More and more people are getting this. This is just reinforcing knowledge and trying to get certain people that are still stuck in an emotional lockbox to kind of burst out. Because they're going to feel like shit in a couple of months, possibly even a year or so. And you don't need to feel shit because being manipulated this way. Again, half-truths. Do your research, because if you're going to be selective on science, you're not applying the scientific process. Kick some ass, people.